Hello! You are listening to a Christmas special broadcast of Radio Snooker with Nick Metcalf, where radio meets snooker at last. And you are most welcome to this festive broadcast of the new service that I hope you're all enjoying. It's not going to be particularly special or particularly related to Christmas. I'm just at home here on a normal night. Yes, it is Christmas week now, just entered. But, otherwise it's just, coffee, phone, diary, paper diary, of course, old school, scraggly old headphones. So it's a copy of today's Sunday newspaper here. But otherwise it's just, same old, same old. So the old Trades Descriptions Act could come into operation really with a description here of the word special. But anyway, you know what we like in the media. We'll tag any old line on to try and get a few more people to listen in. But it's great to have you there. Now, this service is only a few weeks old, and it will take a bit longer, I think, to get it established. But I really do hope you enjoy what I've been doing so far. Started off, didn't I, at the UK Championship in York with, a set of interviews, really. The first of them was with the 1997 world champion, Ken Doherty. Couldn't think of a much better voice to kick off with than Ken. He really is one of the nicest characters and one of the funniest characters in the sport. So that was brilliant. Had Ken talking about a number of issues, really, including the venue, York, and there's some talk about it possibly leaving there in the relatively near future, not next year, not the 25 edition, that'll be in York, but maybe what its future is. And Ken had some words to say about that. Big fan of York, and also had some words about what has been a brilliant rivalry recently, and we're hoping continues for a number of years between Judd Trump and Kyron Wilson. Then I spoke to Dominic Dale, of course, another character like Ken that straddles those two arenas of playing and calling the game, commentating for television. But in Dominic's case, unlike Ken, he's not carrying on, not beyond this season. He's retiring. And he told me on there, as he did for a written interview recently, that he's not having second thoughts. Far from it. He's going to stop. And then one interview I was particularly pleased to get, and I know I've got a number of nice comments about that, which was Tatiana Wollaston. During the sessions of the finals, in between, she, of course, was the referee. It was her first Triple Crown final, but she took time to speak to me. Not an arranged interview, just bumped into her backstage, but very typical of snooker. And I tell you, there's not a lot of sports you could do that for. So we're really lucky as journalists and as broadcasters in this sport. I know we're very aware of that. So I kicked off with that. Then I brought you commentary of the closing stages of that UK final. Judd Trump beating Barry Hawkins. What a smashing final it was. Barry trying to get all those snookers in that last frame. He got one, didn't he? But he couldn't quite get another, and Judd got over the line for his latest Triple Crown success. And then a week later, I was broadcasting again to bring you the shootout final. Tom Ford winning that, claiming his first ever ranking title, beating Liam Graham in the final. And then I brought you the closing stages of the Scottish Open final between Lei Pei Fan and Wu Yiza. Wu Yiza went into that as favourite, but it was Lei that got the job done and won the title. Real surprise that, wasn't it? For anyone that's world ranking position in the 80s, it was indeed the lowest ranked player for a number of decades, Lei, to win a ranking tournament. So that was smashing. Had a selection of good stories since we came on air. Snooker always throws up good stories, of course, month after month, year after year. What keeps us all hooked on this game, isn't it? One of the many things that keeps us hooked on this game. So I am here for not particularly a long time, but hopefully a good time. And it's going to be a case of going through some of your correspondence, which I'm really grateful to have received, and to answer that, as I've been suggesting I would for a while now on social media. And yes, in what you've got to say, and maybe talking a little bit about some of the thoughts I have about the service and what I might be planning for times to come. Let's kick off then with Brian McGovern, who is great guy. Brian, often enjoyed chatting to him on social media and the like. And he says, "Hello, Nick. Thank you for an enjoyable commentary on the Scottish Open final. If you were visually impaired or blind, it would be easy to follow the action with your commentary. Keep up the good work and looking forward to the Christmas special. Happy Christmas, Brian." Same to you, Brian. A very happy Christmas to you, sir. And that means a lot for you to say that in your opinion, it would be easier to follow the action if somebody was visually impaired or blind. And that's, just something I'm really, really pleased to hear, because it's not the hardest sport, frankly, to call, I don't think, in an audio sense, because it is relatively slow moving, a bit different in the shootout, of course, and where they have those time limits for each shot. But you can, describe, I'm not going to say every single shot, because I think that's perhaps a tall order, but nearly all the shots. I was just discussing actually the last few days on social media about the best radio sports. In my opinion, they're boxing and cricket. Boxing in a fast-paced, visceral sense, and cricket in a sort of much slower-paced, giving you company for days on end type way. But they all differ. Everyone's got their own opinion on what they like as radio sports, of course. A couple of people said golf and suggested that was an underrated radio sport, and I think it is underrated. But I wouldn't necessarily have it right up there near the top. I was saying I think racing's a great radio sport, frankly. It can be thrilling on the wireless. And football doesn't necessarily work that well, really, on radio, but I'm immensely fond of football on the radio. That gives me great comfort and enjoyment, and has done for decades throughout my life. So there's loads of sports. I also think tennis is a funny one, because I think they do miss quite a lot. I never called tennis, but I think they do miss quite a lot of shots in there. That's no criticism. It's very hard to keep up to date with everything that's happening. Quick fire, rallies, shot. Anyone that's played tennis out there or watched it will know it's quite fast paced, really. If you're talking on radio and describing it, it's not really easy to describe every shot, to be honest. But snooker, I think you can. So it's nice to hear that you think you get a fair view of that. And if somebody was visually impaired or blind, they could follow the action. That's music to my ears, really. That's what I want to hear. And that's what I'm aiming to do. And of course, aiming to get better with that as the times go on. So thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. And all the best for the festive season to you. Next, Brian Dobson. Basically, the conclusion is, and I've said this on other outlets before, everyone that calls Brian is a big fan of mine. Other people with other names will occasionally be fans and they'll say nice things. But if you're called Brian, you're essentially a big fan of mine. Not a guarantee, but getting towards a guarantee. And that's very nice. I'm very grateful for that. And one of the Brians is Dobson, who I know is a big snooker fan. I've heard and Brian elsewhere, and I've enjoyed reading his tweets, and I know he's a proper old school snooker character. So great to hear from you, Brian. And he says, we have it for cricket, so why not for snooker? Fair play, Nick. Thanks for that. I mean, yeah, obviously cricket is legendary, isn't it? I think most people probably listening to this from the UK, and cricket has been something very permanent in our lives on the radio, predominantly with Test Match Special from the BBC. Have had cricket elsewhere, mainly on Talk Sport in recent times, but we mainly know it, don't we, through Test Match Special, and it's been legendary for generations. Think about the likes of Johners, Brian Johnston on there, and Freddie Truman and Trevor Bailey, people I grew up listening to, Don Mosley, the Alderman, all these sort of people, wonderful. CMJ, who I loved, Christopher Martin Jenkins, great voices, right through to now, of course, with Jonathan Agnew and different people on there. Henry Blofeld was a voice for many years on there. And that lends itself perfectly to this medium, frankly. One of the reasons I wanted to do this was I don't think snooker ever has been done on radio, nor has darts, frankly. but that's been put right in recent times, and that works perfectly well. Very entertaining. I hear people praise it all the time. They enjoy listening. So I see no reason why anything can't be done sports wise. If it's done competently, done well, done with a certain passion about it, I think it can be done. And hopefully, I'm slowly but surely going to prove that to be the case here on Radio Snooker. But thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And here's Padshaw next. One suggestion, Nick. Bit of a slap wrist for me here, which I've accepted because he's sort of right, really. I've been trying to avoid news and results because I wanted to watch the whole last day of the shootout on rerun, not knowing the results. And yet, first thing this morning, spoiler of all spoilers. Anyhow, the show is great. These little interviews are real nuggets. Well, thank you very much indeed for that, Bradshaw. And yeah, I have to say, you were right on that. But I have had sort of other thoughts about that. I did write on the description, Tom Ford v. Lee and Graham. But of course, some people don't want to watch stuff live. And that was too much of a spoiler too soon. So I thought I won't do that for finals. And I didn't do it for the Scottish. But I thought, actually, that's a bit different. Because that's not the fast pace of the shootout when you go into the last day with so many players still involved. Everyone knows what the final is on the Sunday going into it. Even if you are waiting, you'll know by late Sunday what the final is, because the final is decided late on Saturday, if you like, when the second semi-final is won and lost. So I might still put the names for the other finals that are not shootout. And if anyone has any objections to that or wants to sort of challenge me a bit on that, that's fine. Let me know. I might think again, but I think it's all right for that. But shootout, totally take your point, Padshaw. Sorry about that. And the irony is I can't bear spoilers myself. If I'm watching a television show, particularly one I love, I remember Breaking Bad comes to mind and Better Call Saul. I had to block everything out, everything, until I saw the climax myself. Especially when you've been invested in, you haven't been invested in this for years at all, but this is different. But if I've been invested in TV for years and want to see an end of a season or an end of the end of the whole thing, I want to see it. I don't want to hit sports. So I get that. So thank you for that point. I'll take that on board. Next to John Snooker, who says, really enjoyed listening to the coverage from York with the bite-sized interviews. And I've just finished listening to the final on the train back from York. Hope it returns again soon and keep up the great work. Well, I have returned since then, John. Thank you for that. And you combine two of my great loves there, train and radio. Yeah, listening to wireless on the train, on the Rattler, as I often call it, is two of my pleasures together there. So I love that myself. So thank you for that. Much appreciated and glad you enjoyed it. Mark Williams next. Not that one. Or, I presume, the other one being the security man, Mark Williams, who's a bit of a regular face at events. If you go to snooker a lot, you might not know the name, but you'll know the face. Mark Williams, this one, says, I must say I'm really enjoying the Radio Snooker episodes. Keep them coming thick and fast, Nick. Well, I might not all be thick and fast. They might be sort of a bit thick and slow at times, but I'll keep it chugging along, hopefully. Thank you for those words, Mark. Much appreciated. Brian Campbell, yet another Brian that's a fan of mine. It really is something else, this. Brian says, I've really been enjoying Radio Snooker. These snooker vignettes are a little treat whenever they appear on my feed. Keep up the great work. I appreciate that, Brian. Don't hear the word vignettes a lot in life. Not enough, I would say, for my liking. Nice word, smashing word to throw up there, Brian. And yes, that's kind of what I'm aiming for. With the interviews, that's of course what I'm aiming for. There might be a time when I do more of a sit-down one, more than a range one, but I don't think so. Because hopefully some of you will be aware out there that I'm also a presenter on the Talking Snooker podcast with Phil Haig. And that's the kind of the arena where I like to think we will be focusing on those longer interviews. This, I wanted to be something different, which is short form with that live element. People I see generally at events. And obviously, it's out of my hands anyway, because these guys, these personalities, these big people, big players or officials or other journalists, whatever, they won't want to speak to me for more than 5 minutes, maybe 10 max if I'm a bit cheeky. But really, that will be it. So there'll only be vignettes, even if I wanted it to be something else, because it wouldn't be professional or courteous of me to keep people for longer than that when they're just at a tournament working or doing stuff, you know. So that's fine. I appreciate that. I know that on that other audio arena that I do with Phil, I work on with Phil. We have been known for very long episodes. Although I would, in our defence, say that's tightened up a bit the last couple of seasons, but certainly early on we did sort of marathons. That's not what I'm aiming for here. Very much not. And this will not be. I don't aim this for this special to be particularly long. I think we've done about 10 minutes, maybe a bit over now. I don't want to do much more than 20. So that's kind of what I'll be aiming for. Tony next. I really like these commentaries. Are there any plans to actually do any of them live? Very good question, Tony. Yes, so far the commentaries have been as live as I think people still call them in the radio world. Did quite a lot of work on BBC Radio many years ago now, really, and that was always the line that was used there. I think it might be used in telly as well, as live. I suppose it means effectively live, but it's not live. I've been putting them out half an hour or an hour after the final is over, and people can listen back, as one of our correspondents did there on the train, just to see how I call it, how I saw it, or just to have there as a nice record. I think that's kind of what I'm aiming for early on. But I do want to have a live element. Now, on this one, I'm all ears. Technology and me will never be immensely comfortable bedfellows. I've never pretended otherwise, frankly. So if I have any nerves and worries about this service or anything in the audio arena, it's never been the talking. And I'm sorry, that sounds arrogant. I have lots of faults and lots of things I can't do in life, trust me. Some things I wish I could do. But talking is not an area I struggle with in life and never have done. I'm sure many of you are the same. I'm sure many of you are great talkers out there. You'll understand this. Talking is not an issue for me. I talk for England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and maybe many other countries put together. But the technology is my concern, really. That is a nervous area for me. So if you have any suggestions for where to do it live, I'm all ears. Where I've decided to do it, because I know I've seen other people do it, it's YouTube. Now, I do want to do that in time. There's a bit of a practical reason why not so far, in that I think you can only produce and send out certain services on there if you've got a certain number of subscribers. I'm not up to the required level yet, and that's fine. I've just started this. I don't expect there to be, a ridiculous number or great number of followers on there. It's a relatively small number. I'll need to push those numbers up a bit, and I need to plug that from time to time without going overboard, because that drives people mad. But from time to time, I'll say that on social media and keep those numbers ticking up. So early on, I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing, but in time, I do intend there to be a live element. That's not an absolute guarantee. Things may change. There may be other issues and complications at play, but I do want there at some stage to be a live element to Radio Snooker. So kind of watch this space on that one. And let's now go to the last of the comments from Greg Jones, who says, hats off to you, Nick. I've loved talking snooker with you and Phil for years now, and I also really enjoy your news service. I love all sport on the radio, and I'll be listening to your commentaries from now on. Thank you, Greg. I also love all sport on the radio, so we share that, and it's great that you're listening in. I appreciate that. Thank you for listening to the podcast too, which is Talking Snooker, of course, for those that don't tune in. Always welcome new listeners there. We're into our 5th year now. People, are new listeners all the time, and we'll be bringing listeners our Christmas special to review 2024 on that platform soon. And then, of course, we'll go into the new year with lots of new plans, new voices. We do regularly have guests on there, and sort of tallied with Phil and I reviewing and talking about the various events. So at different times of the year, obviously, it's much more events heavy like now. But sometimes in the summer when it's quieter, we tend to have more guests in. That's kind of how it works out. But listen, thanks. This is a Radio Snooker podcast. must leave talking snooker aside a bit as well, because that's another platform. But I like to sort of cross pollinate, if you like, and plug my different services if I can. But thanks for that, Greg. Really much appreciated. So that's your correspondence. I'm really grateful for it. Keep it coming, please, for the remainder of this year, indeed into 25. It's radiosnooker@mail.com. So that's radiosnooker@mail.com. And just to say, while I'm shamelessly plugging, my Sporting Life column reviewing the snooker year is available now as well on the Sporting Life website. And I plug this extensively actually on my Twitter feed. It's on Reddit, it's on Facebook. So hopefully you've got a good chance of, if you follow me on different outlets, of seeing that. A hell of a year, of course, from Kyron Wilson's Crucible Triumph to continuing excellence from Judd Trump and the success of Chinese players, including young players, which has become a clear progression, frankly, and a big talking point. Snooker in Saudi Arabia, which has certainly been a big talking point, often for the wrong reasons. And indeed, I've also been writing about the loss of two of this sport's truly memorable champions, both hailing from Wales, Ray Reid and Terry Griffiths. So a poignant year in that sense. And as ever, there's so much to look back on at the end of the snooker year. So I've done my best to collate it all in that column. So if you'd like to look at that, my review of the snooker year, I'd be grateful. So let me say then that I'll be back in 2025. And of course, a wonderful thing for all of us that love this sport dearly is that there's a very special tournament at the start of the year. When I was a boy, it was often February and growing up, but now the Masters is, of course, right at the start of the year, and it is going to be immensely special, really. I don't use that word immensely lightly. 50 years of the Masters will be celebrating. It's a very special birthday. And if that wasn't special enough, we got just a wonderful match to savour at the start of the tournament. The very first afternoon, we're going to see Ronnie O'Sullivan against John Higgins, two members of the class of 92, of course, two of the absolute greats of this sport doing battle once more. I think it's 30 years on from their first Masters meeting, so it's going to be immensely special. We've seen some great atmospheres over the years. Judd Trump, John Higgins, when Judd was much younger, World Final comes to mind. A recent John Higgins and Mark Williams meeting at the Masters comes to mind. But this, I think, will be right up there. This will be a hell of a Sunday afternoon atmosphere at Alexandra Palace. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of that atmosphere and generally sharing some of the magic of the Masters with you here on Radio Snooker. I'm intending to send out a number of broadcasts from there. So I hope this new service can be a regular companion for you when the Masters is once more in our lives in the new year. That's about it then for this Christmas special, which, as I said in the start, wasn't particularly festive, was it, to be honest? I mean, I felt I could have just worn a bit of tinsel around my head or something. That's something I might do for the podcast, actually. Sort of quite naff and hammy thing I would do. I think you'd agree if you follow that service. But I am grateful for your correspondence. Do keep it coming, please. Radiosnooker@mail.com. Thank you for all the kind words you said and the constructive feedback you've given me. And, of course, for tuning in on the early weeks of this service. We are, available. I say we quite grandly. It's just me, isn't it, really? Let's be clear. On a number of platforms. And that's what I want. I don't want to be pigeonholed as a specific audio service. I want it to be more ubiquitous than that, really. So you'll be able to get it on platforms like Apple and Spotify, but it'll also be on YouTube. Someone's on my SoundCloud, so various places. And, do keep an eye on the Twitter account, of course, Radio Snooker. If you don't follow that, I'll do my best to plug where you may be able to listen to Radio Snooker. And of course, I'll do it on my own Twitter feed as well. Nick Metcalf, I am on there. and Nick_Metcalf on Twitter. And of course, you can easily Bluetooth the service as well onto your radio, your traditional transistor, your radio set, which I love doing, and I do that at home. So if you want to do that, of course, that's brilliant as well. You can listen to us on the radio as God intended, and however you do listen, I am most grateful. And all I should say, really, to be sincere, for once, is have a great Christmas to you and all your families. Do have a lovely, peaceful, restful, if you can, and a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I look forward to your company in 2025. We'll kick off with the Masters and hopefully bring you lots more interesting interviews and commentaries on this new service. But I'm going to sign off for now because I didn't want this to be particularly long. I think it's over the 20-minute mark. That's about okay, I think. And say Merry Christmas, everybody. And this is Nick Metcalf saying, that's your lot for this time. See you next time.